French President Emmanuel Macron and Brigitte are seated at the Élysée Palace breakfast table.
Brigitte, I had the most extraordinary dream last night. Absurd, baffling, tragicomic. You'd have loved it.
Tragicomic? It sounds like one of your cabinet meetings. Or maybe one of your recent press conferences.
No, this was different. I was seated on a golden throne, floating above the Sahara. The sand stretched endlessly in all directions, and a great line of African leaders paraded before me. Each one carried a ceremonial baguette.
A baguette?
Yes, a baguette, but they weren't eating them. They were snapping them in two, right in front of my eyes. Symbolic, I suppose.
How dramatic. What did you do?
Well, I stood up, draped in a toga like Jupiter himself, and delivered a speech. I told them how I had factualized history for their benefit, how I had budged strategically for the greater good, how France had bestowed sovereignty upon them as a generous gift. I told them it was time to use that word we had taught them when we introduced them to civilization. You know, merci.
And how did they respond?
They burst into laughter. One of them said, "Merci? Merci for what? Your helicopters? Your advisors? Your factualizations?" Then they turned their backs, one by one, until I was speaking to the empty desert.
How horribly rude of them. When will they ever learn manners?
Indeed. Then the scene shifted. I was suddenly in the Élysée Palace. Except it wasn't the Élysée. It was a crumbling sandcastle. I was trying to rebuild it, but every time I added a grain of sand, a gust of wind blew it away.
A metaphor for your domestic policy, perhaps?
Very droll, Brigitte. Anyway, then Jupiter himself appeared, or was it de Gaulle? I couldn't tell. He pointed a giant croissant at me and declared, "You have failed to reign as a king. You must now rule as a waiter."
A waiter? How humiliating.
Oh, it gets worse. Suddenly, I was in a cafe serving coffee to a table full of African leaders. They ordered frappes, but the machine was broken. One of them said, "If you can't serve frappes, why are you even here?"
Didn't they realize that you were offering to serve them? How did you answer?
I started reciting the Declaration of Human Rights, but they ignored me. Then Marine Le Pen walked in, smiling, and everyone cheered. Out of sympathy for the death of her father, I assumed, but I realized that they must really have been cheering for me. After all, I'm the president and have beaten her twice.
What a nightmare.
It didn't stop there. As I fled the cafe, I found myself in a jungle of baguettes. They were growing on trees, but every time I reached for one, it turned into a snake and hissed, "Where is your gratitude now, Monsieur Macron? You who claim to be king of the gods?"
Good heavens, what did you do?
I woke up, but I can't shake the feeling that it means something, that perhaps I misunderstood Brigitte, that the world fails to see my vision.
Don't worry, dear. I think the world is just beginning to understand you. Happy New Year. This is definitely going to be a good one.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.